Welcome to Bard and Barrel. This is going to be one of our first series that we do on this channel. We want to first talk about knowing your players. And we're going to go through each player type and just chat a little bit about that and talk a little bit about the DM side of things. This is mostly geared towards Dungeon Masters and what you can do to maybe improve your game, spice up your game, or tell us what we're doing wrong, at least, you know? So, my name's Christian. I'll mostly be hosting this, and then here's my co-host here, Riley. Yep. And let's get into this, right? So, here we go. So, if you are brand new to DMing, you've been here a while, you've been doing this for a while, you've got tons of stories, campaigns, whether you're got a ton of experience or a little experience, hopefully you can find something good out of what we have to speak about today. But as you're flipping through the DMG, you'll flip through just past the introduction. You'll find a page on page 6 called Know Your Players. Let's just read right from there. Yeah? It says, the success of a D&D game hinges on your ability to entertain the other players at the game table. Whereas their role is to create characters, the protagonists of the campaign, breathe life into them, and help steer the campaign through their characters' actions, your role is to keep the players and yourself interested and immersed in the world you've created, and to let their characters do awesome things. Knowing what your players enjoy the most helps you create and run adventures that they will enjoy and remember. Once you know which of the following activities each player in your group enjoys the most, you can tailor adventures that satisfy your players' preferences as much as possible, thus keeping them engaged. Maybe before we just touch on that, let's talk a little bit about knowing your players. Riley, do you want to maybe take?
Yeah, I think this
one?
thing, this introduction to knowing your players, hits it the nail right on the head. The success of a D&D game hinges on your ability to entertain the other players at the game table. Now, everyone, has different personalities, and when they come to a D&D game, are expecting different things. And being able to find ways to combine those aspects of your game, whether you're in combat but you need social capabilities, being able to intermingle those things to keep everyone engaged, even if some players aren't super fond of the social aspect but others are, so that way everyone can stay engaged in the game and doesn't end up on their phones or those things that we as DMs hate seeing. I think this starts out really well with that intro. Something else that Matt Colville states to be a great DM is to add drama. Your job as a DM is to add drama. And so if you think about any good movie, the things that we enjoy most about them are the parts that have good drama. They engage us in the game.
I'll just add one little thing to that, though. I mean, it's important to know your players because, like you said, even what you brought up with what Matt says is we need to bring drama to our players. We need to create drama. That's hard to do if you don't know how your players tick, what makes them move. And if they're in character, right, you got to know who they're playing. Are they driven by story? Are they driven by playing their character? And that's what each of these items do talk about. So, let's jump right into acting. So I'll read that one off too. So we've got acting. Players who enjoy acting like getting into character and speaking in their characters' voices. They enjoy social interactions with NPCs, monsters, and their fellow party members.
Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game, and acting is a huge part of the game, and is, in my opinion, I think one of the more versatile ways to enjoy the game, because you can, in no matter what part, if you're in combat, if you're in a social encounter, if the DM is, just describing the environment, if you're exploring, whatever, acting is at any stage important.
This is how you're going to be able to engage these players as a DM, right? So the first thing that they give us is give your players opportunities to develop their characters' personalities and backgrounds. Riley, do you want to chat about that?
In D&D, when you create your characters, you normally give that character a history. There's a reason, your character acts the way that they do. The things that they are because of who they were. And so this becomes a pivotal part when interacting with a player that enjoys acting, to immerse their character in the new world that is your D&D campaign. And so allowing them to now develop their character from what they were into what they are, and continuing that saga of their character life, is pivotal to them enjoying the game. It adds story element for the rest of the characters as well, and allows them to really shine forth, that personality that they have created behind their character.
There was a time in one of my campaigns, one of my players was actual royalty. But the party he was with, they didn't know about his royalty, his line that he was running through. And, he had no idea this was coming. It was something that I had planned for a little bit, but was just waiting for the right opportunity to happen. And as he was walking through town, boom, he smacks into this town guard, and they accidentally run into each other. They knock each other to the ground. It knocks my player's hood off, and it kind of just exposed his face to this guard. And the guard immediately recognizes him, right? He says, "Wait a minute, you're Prince so-and-so." And he's going, no, you've got the wrong guy, right? The party's going, "You're who?" And it creates a lot of this drama that really allows a lot more role play to branch off, right? So this small interaction allows for now the players are going to start asking questions. Excuse me, you didn't tell us this. How can we trust you, right? Maybe there's trust issues. Maybe they're appalled by who you are and feel like they need to fall down and worship you or whatever, But anyway, so the more information you can collect up front, and the more you know about not only your player themselves, but the character they're playing, will actually help you be able to open this up so that they can role play their character, because that forced the player into it too, right? He had to then, he actually felt somewhat, maybe not ashamed, but he felt almost embarrassed or caught off guard. At least he was nervous. He was like, "Oh no, I'm recognized. That people aren't supposed to know who I am," right? And he felt that in the real world, even though it was his character going through it. This is something that I ask my players as well, as I say, "Hey, what are your goals with this character? Where do you want to end up? Do you want to be, the leader of the city or whatever, what are their goals with the character?" And I try to, if they don't have it, try to flesh it out so that they can be presented with difficult situations and difficult decisions that will define who they are. Sorry, Riley, I'm really onto this one. So we had a player who was, in his background story, he was a half orc, big old beast, huge guy. And what he did was, let's see if I remember this right. So he had a moment in his backstory where his mother, he was raised by a single mom. His mother was killed by some bandits in an alleyway, essentially. And he was on his way to see her and came across this. This was the story that he'd written up. And it was a traumatic event in his life to have seen his mother get killed like that. And then he absolutely just destroys all the people there, right? He just gores them completely. They're dead. Now, what was interesting was he had to come back to that town, and he had to face some of the people that originally banished him for killing they were bandits, but they were also townspeople, so they kicked him out of town, right? He was banished, essentially, from his hometown. The storyline brings him back. He has to confront some of the people that actually originally kicked him out. He wanted to get rid of he wanted to cleanse his past. He didn't want to have that burden on him where he's a murderer and he's been banished from his town. And so he was faced with these decisions of, okay, do you want to continue to be a killer, or are you actually going to change, right? And he decided not to kill the person he dueled. And so then it was a very pivotal moment. It was an emotional moment for him, for his character. It was powerful. It was. And, that would have never worked had I not known specific pieces of his backstory, been able to play off of important events in his life. It allows you as the DM to create drama, allows you to really thicken the player's experience. That's my 2 cents on as far as like trying to get people to develop their characters out and try to help them as a DM to flesh those out. Even if you have to sit down and come up with ideas with them, it really, really gives you a lot of options. So,
yeah, and that plays into our next point, I think, really well, allowing the players to interact regularly with NPCs. Going back to that that most recent story you just gave out, I remember that something had happened with the party, and the way to get out of it, we were in trouble for some reason, and the way to get out of it was that we ended up coming to an agreement that the single combat thing was the kind of the way out, and this character had this past with whoever this guard, the captain of the guard was. He ended up pummeling the dude. It was kind of fun to watch, and it was really a cool moment because he role played that really well. And if I remember correctly, and we can talk about this a little bit later, I believe he was a barbarian fighter. I think he was a little bit mixed between the two, and part of his character story was that he was trying to control his rage before his rage had kind of overtaken him, and so now it was more of him deciding when that rage was acceptable and when it wasn't. And so that was kind of a cool key moment that I didn't realize that he was doing until this moment occurred. And that was really cool because going back to your original point of telling your backstory, but giving the DM information on where you want to continue, how you want to perceive your character in the future, where your goals are, and what you're pushing forward to, allows the DM to bring up parts similar to this, where your character can interact with the NPC that's maybe part of their past, or interact with someone who knew someone from their past, etc., that allows them to now be like, wait, hey, I know that person. Like, you just name drop someone that, that was my father, that was, X, Y, and Z. It allows them to now be engaged a little bit more. And then going to the royalty example earlier, it allows the other players that are completely surprised by this to now be interested in that player character and to now start asking them questions and interacting socially with each other, which then allows you as the DM to sit back and just watch your players enjoy the game and talk it out with each other.
Some of these actors out there are wild cards, right? Like, they might just run up to people and just start chatting with people, and you've got to come up with interactions on the fly, like stuff that you might not plan for.
Got a great example of that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a player in one of the first campaigns, Christian ended up DMing, and for some reason we were going into like a siege of some kind, I believe, and we were looking to pick up some potions. And from what I remember you telling me afterwards, you had totally improv'd this character. But to this day, this is one of our group's favorite characters ever. He was this little gnome guy. To this day, none of us can remember his name for some reason. But he was the most energetic, small, klutzy, clumsy potions dealer. It was just hilarious. The voice that you gave him and everything was just quality. This had nothing to do with anyone's backstory. This was just an NPC that was super fun and exciting, to where we ended up going back because we wanted to keep interacting with this character over and over and over again. I had another DM as well in another campaign I was a part of who created this single, like, quick side encounter on our way to a city that we ended up taking and running with to the end of the game. We ended up hiring him as our personal chef. Like, the dude was wonderful. And so these small side characters that you introduce in your campaign as DMs can truly end up being these interactions with the player characters that just engages them. It keeps them focused and keeps them interested because they're excited to go talk with what's his face that sells potions, and it's just hilarious to watch. It's almost worthwhile to go buy a health potion just to watch him like drop and shatter 14 other things and just be. It's just such a fun environment and makes it so much easier for the rest of the players that may not be in this category of actors as players to now engage in that and kind of feel and understand what it's like.
So I've had characters that have flopped too. People that were supposed to be really integral pieces of the campaign or of the story or of even of just a quick like adventure, and it just never, either it just didn't click with somebody or with the group, or I didn't pull it off the way that I really wanted to, and things like that. So like I said, it takes a lot of, you just kind of gotta throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
The next point that it talks about here is adding role-playing elements to combat encounters. Imagine having an NPC that joins along with the characters for some reason, as just like a side conversation piece. That's just a fellow traveler. You end up in a combat scenario as bandits are ambushing you. Role play that character out just being like a hilarious drunk that's just like somehow like swaying through and doing like the things perfectly that he needs to do. He's still knocking people out, but you're doing it in a comedic way, and you're vocalizing this as he, if you roll an at 20, really talk, maybe he's fumbling around and just his clumsiness somehow trips up the enemies, and just make it this wonderful encounter that's just the players feel like they're just watching a cutscene, and somehow this dude just wipes out the bandits, and it makes something that was supposed to be just combat focused into now kind of a social encounter. It also encourages the players to be a little bit more inclusive in how they go about, oh, well, that was kind of cool how he described that character and the way that he was fighting, and be a little bit more creative with their fighting style as well. I do believe that there's a dynamic with, as a DM, everything that goes unconscious just instantly dies, is out of the picture. And in warfare, that's not always the case. Just because you go down, you could be still alive in some fashion. And like you said, you could bring up, that they have information, or that they beg for their life, that they apologize for what they're doing in hopes that they spare their life. And this allows the players to maybe have a little bit more compassion as well. If you end up having, a group that is big into just killing everything, this is a great way to hopefully try and stave that and halt that of just going and killing everything that has a reason to live. Maybe have some, if they start slaughtering 2 or 3 of them and the other 3 or 4 get scared, they're going to run away. They don't want to die. Make it dynamic. Give those role-playing moments to the characters to decide whether or not they want to, change their character in their traits, and whether they apply that to that moment, or if they just continue on, murdering everything, which is also very possible.
Yeah.
But that's their choice. You're giving them the option rather than this is a fight to the death all the time.
Yeah.
And so it gives that role-playing option, and once again allows those players that maybe enjoy combat more to be part of the acting experience, and also allows the players that enjoy the acting that maybe don't like combat to now have that interaction.
Sure, yeah. And I think that's something, again, that you have done phenomenally well. My small brain, I don't know why I never ever thought about this, but having people retreat. Like, I remember in so many encounters with in your campaigns, we would just be slaughtering these things. And to think that this one goblin, after watching all of his comrades just get absolutely chopped in half, is going to stand there and fight by himself the last 5 heroes, or however many your people are in your party, is crazy, right? Like, that's got to be the most courageous freaking goblin ever. Okay, let's see. Let's take a look at this next one. So we've got incorporating elements from their characters' backgrounds into your adventures.
I think in the intro to acting, I think that definitely incorporates a lot of what we've kind of already discussed, but we can recap a little bit
Mm,
on the the more you have in your backstory. Once again, it doesn't have to be fully fleshed out. It doesn't have to be a fully written essay about your backstory, but just having some key people, some key events, and where your character is going can really help the DM. And DMs encourage this to your players that they now have this history to build off of, and they have somewhere that they're going, and you can play off of what's in their history to now be a part of their future, or no longer be a part of their future, creating drama, so on and so forth. And so this, once again, if you run into an encounter, say they're fighting a bunch of people and that are hooded, part of a cult. They're not entirely sure who the people are that they're fighting, and then all of a sudden, when all is said and done, they're going through, kind of rummaging through and looting the corpses. One of them finds out, it was, let's say that they had a backstory of their best friend who ended up getting abducted when he was younger and by these mysterious men, and there he is. Like he ended up just fighting his best friend and ended up killing him accidentally. Now there's this weird backstory moment where he's crying over this corpse that the rest of the people are like, wow, what's going on? Now creates this little bit of drama. Maybe you don't have to go to that extent, but it creates these opportunities for the characters and the players to interact with each other and create a moment that allows you to kind of sit back and watch them build on and create some of these very long lasting characters that you end up just playing through the rest of the game because they've enjoyed them so much.
I also wanted to highlight what you said too. Is the backstory. It doesn't have to be 10, 20 pages long, right? It can be. If you give me a 20-page long backstory, it takes me a long time to read, right? So I'm not going to get through that very well. In the story we talked about, where the player was the half-orc barbarian fighter and was struggling with rage, I've literally got that sent to me in a text, probably about that big, right? Like it was very short, just a quick text. Wasn't super like well polished and had all these different things. It had person, place, thing, right? He had his mom. That was the person, his place that he was from, and perhaps a place that the the traumatic event happened, and a thing, right? He had this amulet that his mother gave him that he would wear in remembrance of her, and multiple times throughout the whole campaign, we were able to play off of places that he was from, events that had happened to him, people that he knew, and things that he had on him or knew about, right? And it really gives you a lot of flexibility. So I urge you DMs to urge your players to incorporate that and ask questions and set that stuff up before you start playing, so that you have that in your arsenal.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to foreshadow. Use a lot of the spells that are given in the D&D universe. There's a lot of them, but there's a ton of them that aren't used all that often. Things like dream that can be used on the players to foreshadow events, things from their past, and then all of a sudden in another session or two, it's like deja vu because they had a dream about this, but now it's happening. Those kind of things where you're foreshadowing, and then they kind of start catching on, like, wait, these dreams are actually meaning something. There's a possibility that this, and this, or whatever. Their dreams are their only ways that they communicate with their loved ones, from the past. They're just part of their consciousness. Things of that nature that kind of help them and give them context, which then allows them to continually remember as a player. And I think this is a big part, is that you get 3 or 4 sessions in and you haven't read your backstory since you started the campaign. And so you've kind of, if you haven't been fully immersed in that, you've kind of forgot a little bit about that backstory. And having those reminders, even if they're small little interactions that really don't mean much, it just reminds you, oh yeah, I have this part of my backstory. Let's play into that a little bit more. and it allows them to re-engage with that acting. And we keep talking back about this character, this barbarian, with his mother passing away. This is also a player who I would not categorize as being one of, like, that's the reason he plays the game. But yet we always have these instances with him where he does very well in these scenarios, or when he's presented with these, does a good job in this area. And I think it's because those are presented to him, and that's all that players need, is they need something presented to them that they can now take and run with and be a part of their character to then develop into something new.
I would say try to incorporate everybody, give everybody a little bit of time to shine in the spotlight, but don't worry about other people getting bored if the session is not about them that one time.
Yeah, and I think this has been a great intro to knowing your players and the acting, specifically the acting category. Take this and don't try and stereotype every player that you have with each one of these specific things, but just knowing which characters and players play into these specific roles best will help you as DMs to place things in your campaigns that would allow them to have fun. That's what we're all here for. We're here to play a game. We're here to have fun. We're here to enjoy it with our friends. And as long as the DM can provide a little bit extra that really emphasizes that, really goes a long way. And whether or not the players are in this category or not, you can still include things that allow them to participate in this category.
Final thing to say, as far as knowing your players go, if you can't figure it out as a DM, it's okay to ask, right? What do you enjoy about D&D? Do you like building characters? Do you like acting out as your character? And maybe they don't know, and you can give them these examples. You can walk through these and be like, oh, is this stuff you enjoy? Page 6, DMG, right? That is that's our 2 cents on knowing your players and knowing your actors, right? Get them engaged, give them opportunities to role play, give them opportunities to be their characters, and incorporate their stuff into your campaign. Thanks for listening in, and we will catch you in the next one.